All right, I think we're going. Welcome back to another one of these things where we're just kind of talking about whatever comes to mind. I don't know why I started singing that. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday, which I, of course, remember because I had to write a poem today. And today it's about flowers that are shaped like hearts. So if you do see this, go check it out. That's at prismaticplanet.com. Where I'm actually kind of surprised that, like, the statistics I have for the site show that I am generally seeing more people coming in over the course of a week than I used to have. Usually, like back in the day, it was like I'd be like surprised if I saw like in the double digits of people visiting the site, and over the course of a week, and now it's approaching like three digits, and I'm just like, I guess that's cool since I'm like actually not trying at all to push people to go to that website, which maybe I should take that as a sign to just actually do a little bit of a, I don't want to say a marketing push because it's not really a marketing push. It's just boosting posts, essentially paying to put like the post in front of people who might click into it and potentially turn them into people who are following socials and visiting the site more often. Maybe it wouldn't hurt. I don't know. I'd probably need to do a little bit more research into that. I know I did a little bit of that when I first made the social media accounts, which is a little strange. Like, I didn't really realize that it was like that different. I knew that like a professional page or a business page was different than like a person's page on Facebook. I don't think there's a difference on Twitter. I can't remember if you can like delineate an account as a business account rather than like a like an entity. Like it's just a Twitter handle. It doesn't know that it's an organization or a person outside of people recognizing that it's a brand or a site or a product or something. But I had to go back and take a look at that. It seemed a bit murky. Like you need to know how to use those tools to be able to use them effectively to reach people in the way that you're wanting to reach them. And in my case, it's really just put it in front of people who might be interested so they can come see it and maybe tell other people. I don't know if there's any kind of special targeting you do with that or not. Who knows? Anyway, so that's kind of neat. Something that's been coming up. Maybe I'll do something with that. Who knows? I don't currently. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Today, however, was my first day working at my new place of employment. Won't say it here. I'm sure people know it at some point, um, but that was kind of neat going through orientation and things like that, which does bring me to what I kind of wanted to like talk a little bit about because I think it's kind of interesting, at least to me. So when you go through like orientation and things like that, starting any place, whether it be like a school or a club or some type of, I guess those are really it, workplace. Depending on where you're going, if you're joining a team or something, then you'll be introducing yourself to the people who you're going to be in class with, working with, being in a community or group with. And one of the things that I usually bring up is just a bit of my kind of trajectory for what I've been doing for my life so far past high school. I don't really talk too much about what I did in high school or before high school, but usually when I get to the point of, yeah, I before this I was a software engineer in the insurance industry, and then I a was studying game design before that, and then before I was studying game design, I was getting a music degree. And at that point, people are like, that's pretty neat. Like, what do you play and things like that. And it's usually just going into a bit of like, yeah, I still play like percussion, and I learned electric bass recently, and I know piano, and I still play in a group, in an ensemble. You can catch our concerts here and things like that. Shameless plugs for free community concerts, just because music should be heard. Um, but it's always interesting how many people like me in that regard kind of show up to some of these weird. I don't want to say weird. Software engineering isn't particularly strange. It's just that people like me with a background is not technical as software engineer, computer sciences, end up being in positions like I'm in. And I understand that I can't just say, well, creative people are just sort of destined to be kind of wherever there's some sort of creativity required for the job, which is a bit of what I want to talk about here. But that there's also a lot of people will take a chance on me because of certain privileges associated with being a white dude in America. That's just the reality of it. Statistically, I have a better chance at getting a job for something I'm not 100% qualified for because of my background. So, like, if I were going into one of these positions or one of these roles or interviews as a minority, a person of color, or a woman even, then it's more likely that I would need some of those technical background skills to get where I'm at. That isn't to say that I don't know women or people of color who have gotten similar jobs with similar backgrounds as my own. It's not that it's impossible. It's just there's a difference. There's a gap there, and it's worth pointing out that I at least recognize that's a factor in my trajectory. But the point here being that it's interesting that no matter kind of where I go, I do find that there are people with that kind of background. It's like, oh, you have some sort of artsy background when going into this technical position. And it kind of goes back to, I might have mentioned, like, on this channel, one of the other videos I've done before, that, like, software engineering is, you do have to know how to write code when putting together an application or a program. A part of why you get hired is because you can speak a language computers can understand, or at least type a language that computers can understand, or can be compiled down to a language that computers understand. You know the general concepts behind that type of language. But a large part of it, a majority in my opinion, is very design oriented. You have to have a creative mind to be able to do something like software engineering. You're not just going to be able to throw facts together and come out with something that a bunch of people are going to want to use. It might work, but that doesn't mean people want to use it. So being able to talk to or understand more creative aspects of a human experience is honestly pretty helpful. It's one of the things that I've maybe talked about in some interviews or just conversations, that having a background in music helps me. When I'm trying to entertain an audience, it's not like a comedian where I'm speaking a language that the audience just understands, or that most of the audience members would likely understand. If I'm performing comedy at a comedy club or something and I'm speaking English, I would assume that they booked me because their audience would understand an English comic. But maybe there's a whole genre of comedy where it's just like you get somebody up there who just has no idea what they're doing, and it's fun to laugh at a person who you don't understand it. I don't know. It seems a bit mean to me, but maybe that's something that happens. But I'm not actually speaking a language when I'm doing my form of entertainment. I'm performing a bunch of sounds and probably gestures, if I'm doing a decent job, that convey a thought, a musical thought, that others could understand. It's completely subjective, a lot more subjective than saying a word to somebody. Like, that word is going to have a definition, and how you intended that word to be used does have some leeway. Like, you have inflection and intent that people can derive from how you said something. But with music, there's no definition for what middle C means. You can definitely call it out, but on its own, it's not meaning anything. It completely gets its feeling, its sort of meaning, its contextual meaning from everything around it. And not everybody is going to understand it in the same way. However, we get together as these groups of people to make a bunch of these sounds together in hopes that the audience will generally enjoy whatever we put together. And they may walk away with some varying degrees of what we just played and as far as what its meaning was, but everybody will have been at least entertained. And being able to think in a way like that, where your creative expression is something that you might have an idea for a concept that you're wanting to convey, and that thought, while the audience can get that feeling from you, and when an audience member does come to me and be like, yeah, I really like that song, it made me feel XYZ, and I'm like, yeah, XYZ is exactly what we were trying to go for, and that's pretty cool. I didn't speak a language that people traditionally understand or agree upon. I used a bunch of sounds, and potentially me like moving and gesturing in a certain way. Fun thing with percussion is just it's a very physical instrument. You're always moving, so it's not like playing clarinet or saxophone, flute, where you're still physically moving in a lot of ways, but your range of motion is probably a little more limited. I guess flute's not too bad, actually. You can move around a bit. I take that back. Like flute's really, really hard, actually. For me to be able to do the like blowing over a bottle cap thing, I am not physically very capable of doing that. I tried. It's like one of the few woodwind instruments that I was just like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to do this very well ever in my life. Clarinet and saxophone, though, like, you can move around a little bit, but your mouth is pretty much stuck. If you make any one weird motion, you're just going to jam a mouthpiece into your teeth and hurt your mouth. Probably don't want to do that. But with percussion, as long as you generally know kind of where you need to go and where you need to strike next, you're moving very expressively as you're playing anything. Or a lot of instruments where you're carrying it with you and there's a lot you can do. The range of motion that you have available to you is just much greater than most other instruments. And it doesn't really sacrifice how that instrument sounds. It takes a long time to get to that point, don't get me wrong. But it feels like it's a little more... It has more of that room for physical expression while playing. So that, coupled with the just sounds, the conceptual notes that are coming out of yourself or your instrument, are what's reaching other people. And you hope that you're conveying a concept well, and your audience generally agrees with where you were taking it as a performer. And that's a very interesting conversation to have. It's one that I don't think a lot of people have going into, I'm trying to build a product, I'm trying to build an application for other people using a medium where I'm not talking to them directly. I need to use gestures or user experience designs and things like that to let the user understand kind of what this app's intent is and what it's going to do and whether it makes the point very well. Yeah, it like all kind of comes back around to that. Like being able to creatively express what something's intent is or what the definition of something is without words is pretty necessary these days, especially in more of like our text-based world and people using more emoticons and emojis to just show kind of their definition and their intent. We use a lot of shorthand for things, stuff that like music could prepare us for. There's not much shorter hand than you get 13 tones in a traditional chromatic scale for over the course of an octave, and then you have each octave below and above that middle point. So you do get a fair range in there, but what we agree on those notes being there's 13 of those half steps within a scale, it's very limited in how you can express what you want to express. And yet we're still finding new ways to do it all the time. So it's kind of like giving yourself a shorthand, and nobody can really agree on the meaning, and it all comes down to expression and what you want to convey in your performance. And that mindset is pretty helpful when trying to convey what your very technical thing is doing for other people. And I think artists have to do the same kind of thing. They're doing, like any kind of art, really, photography, painting, sculpting, anything like that. You're giving yourself quite a handicap, or you're handicapping yourself quite a bit, where you're not using a medium that we've traditionally used to communicate or to convey thoughts and concepts. You're using something that is subjective to the viewer. One of the things that's usually in the camp of, you own this thing while you're making it, but as soon as you release it in its finished form to the public generally owns where it's going from there. Like, you can say you own that thing, you wrote it, you created it or painted it or composed it, but once an audience member like gets a feeling from your piece for the first time, whatever it is, that's their feeling, and how they interact with that artwork is very much their own. You don't own that. When you release something, how they interact with it and understand it is very much a part of their own. It's their contribution to that art form, to that thing that you created. So it's an interesting way of thinking about how to convey anything to other people. And it shouldn't be as surprising as it kind of is to me, saying it's like, oh yeah, you need to like do this thing where it's very technical and you need to like do certain things in a certain way, otherwise it just won't work right. Coupling that with these abstract ways of communicating thoughts and concepts and feelings and things like that to other people, it works really, really well, honestly. And more people with that mindset should probably be doing these more technical things. It's a very helpful set of skills to have, honestly. And it's one of those things, like, I just get questions about it all the time, like, how did you end up doing computer programming starting from a musician? Like, that doesn't make sense. But in a lot of ways, those kinds of people, or at least people with those kinds of mindsets, are pretty necessary to making not just something that works, but something that people enjoy. So that's pretty neat. Anyway, I think we'll call it at that for today. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.